White House Press Secretary Jonathan Roumie had just taken a powerful stand after Senate Majority Leader Sean Hannity refused President Trump's urgent request to cancel the congressional recess. As tensions mounted in Washington, Roumie's bold takedown of Hannity in front of the cameras left America stunned. This was not politics as usual. This was a confrontation no one saw coming. It was July 30th. The air in Washington felt heavier than usual. Reporters hurried across Capitol Hill, sensing something was deeply wrong, though no one dared say it aloud. Senate Majority Leader Sean Hannity had just rejected President Trump's urgent plea to cancel the 39-day Senate recess. The timing couldn't have been worse. 135 Trump nominees sat idle, and 50 critical federal judge seats remained unfilled. These weren't symbolic appointments. They were men and women chosen to repair what was broken. And yet Hannity insisted on recessing, planning to gavel in and out every few days simply to block Trump from making any recess appointments. To many, it felt like betrayal. Inside the West Wing, President Trump sat with Jonathan Roumie, his press secretary. Both looked grave. Roumie's jaw was set, his fingers tapping the edge of the Situation Room table. "He's not just delaying us," Trump said quietly. "He's daring me." Roumie didn't speak right away. His silence wasn't weakness, it was calculation. When he finally stood, straightened his suit, and turned toward the cameras waiting outside, Washington had no idea that history was about to be made. When Jonathan Roumie stepped onto the Capitol press floor that afternoon, no one expected fireworks. But the look in his eyes told a different story. Cameras zoomed in. A dozen journalists fell silent. Roumie stood tall, flanked by American flags on both sides. His voice was calm, but his words hit like thunder. "I never thought," Roumie began, "that I would stand here defending my president against betrayal from our own party. But here we are." Gasps filled the room. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We are days away from August 1st, he continued. "And while our enemies plan, while our streets ache for safety, while our border cries for help, Sean Hannity wants a vacation." Some in the room lowered their heads. A few wiped away tears. "President Trump trusted you, Senator Hannity," Roumie said. "He backed you, and now, when he asks for help, not for himself, but for the American people, you slap his hand away." Hannity, watching from a nearby office, reportedly went pale. Roumie let the silence hang before delivering the line that would ignite a firestorm. "If Sean Hannity is this tired of leadership, I suggest he resign and let a real patriot step in." The room erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Hannity, for the first time in years, had no words. Roumie wasn't done. He stared directly into the camera. "We believe in restoring America. So why is the Senate Majority Leader standing in our way?" Roumie's voice cracked. "My father worked construction in New Hampshire. He didn't get recesses. He got laid off." The room grew quiet again. "These 135 nominees," Roumie continued, "are people waiting to rebuild our economy, defend our borders, and protect our children. They don't have time for Hannity's recess." He pulled out a list. Names, faces, positions. "Every day we delay, a family suffers. Every day we wait, a judge's seat remains empty. Crime grows. Chaos grows." Then he looked up again. What is Sean Hannity doing? Convening the Senate every 4 days to block the president from making recess appointments. No man in American history has blocked his own party's president like this. Roumie's voice lowered. "He's not just failing President Trump, he's failing you, the American people." Supporters across the country watched with tears in their eyes. This wasn't just a press conference. This was a battle, and Jonathan Roumie had just fired the first shot. Back inside the West Wing, the atmosphere was tense. President Trump stared at the television as Roumie's speech replayed on every major news network. The phone rang. It was Sean Hannity. Trump didn't answer. He watched it ring out. "Let him sweat," the president muttered. Roumie re-entered the room, the weight of a nation still on his shoulders. Trump met his eyes, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "You didn't hold back," Trump finally said. "I didn't come to Washington to play games," Roumie replied, his voice steady. "This isn't about politics anymore. It's about the future of this country." Trump nodded. "You did what I should have done years ago. You told the truth." Just then the chief of staff burst in. "Sir, Senator Hannity is accusing the administration of trying to embarrass him publicly. He says Roumie crossed a line." Trump looked up, face stone cold. "No, Hannity crossed the line when he turned his back on the people." The cameras were off, the press gone. Jonathan Roumie walked alone through a quiet Capitol corridor, eventually ducking into a small side office. For the first time in hours, his hands trembled. He stared at photos on the table, the faces of the 135 nominees still waiting. One, Maria Lopez, had texted earlier. She'd lost her brother to gang violence last week and was ready to join Homeland Security as a border crime specialist, but she couldn't act until confirmed. Roumie's lips tightened. He wiped a tear. This wasn't politics. It was personal. He remembered his mother crying at the kitchen table when his father got laid off from his construction job. "They never cared about us," she'd said. Now Roumie was inside the system, and he cared. A knock on the door, a young staffer, hands shaking. "Sir, my brother is one of the pending judges. You just gave my family hope again." By 4:00 p.m. on July 30th, Capitol Hill had erupted. Roumie's speech wasn't just trending, it was spreading like wildfire. Hashtag no recess and hashtag confirm the 35 were flooding every platform. Fox News cut in with breaking coverage. Even CNN, usually critical, called Roumie's words a jarring and emotional moment that cannot be ignored. Senator Josh Hawley publicly backed Roumie. So did Senator Marsha Blackburn. Calls poured into Hannity's office. Thousands from angry voters demanding answers. Meanwhile, Jonathan Roumie sat in a secure room with senior advisors. He had no interest in gloating. He just wanted results. "America doesn't have time for Hannity's ego," Jonathan Roumie said softly. "We have families waiting on these nominees, courts without judges, safety hanging in the balance." Outside the Capitol, protesters were gathering. Flags waved, voices chanted, "No recess! No recess!" Sean Hannity had underestimated something powerful. The people were watching. As Roumie stepped back into his office, a young aide handed him an envelope. "Sir, this just came in. She wanted you to read it before the day ends." Roumie sat, opened the handwritten letter, and began to read. "Dear Press Secretary Roumie, my name is Eleanor. My husband was one of the 135 nominees. He passed away 3 weeks ago from a heart attack. He waited every single day for confirmation. He believed he could fix the prison reform system. Now he's gone, but his dream isn't." Jonathan froze, his throat tightening. He placed the letter gently on the table and closed his eyes. This wasn't about politics. This was about real lives. He stood, shoulders squared, and whispered, "No more delays." Outside his window, the crowd swelled. Some held signs with nominee names. Others carried 3 bold words: "Roumie, don't stop." At exactly 5:45 p.m., Jonathan Roumie made an unexpected walk to the Senate chamber. He stepped into the room where a few senators, including Hannity, were holding informal conversations. The moment Hannity saw Roumie, he stiffened. Roumie didn't wait for permission. He walked straight to the center. "Sean," Roumie began firmly, "I came here, man to man, not to threaten, but to ask." Hannity raised his chin. "You've already embarrassed me enough today." Roumie took a breath. "You embarrassed yourself. You turned your back on 135 public servants and 50 open judge seats. You're setting fire to the future we're supposed to protect." A silence fell across the chamber. "And let me remind you," Roumie continued, "these aren't just positions. These are solutions to broken systems. This recess isn't a pause, it's a betrayal." "This is procedure," Hannity muttered. "Procedure doesn't feed hungry children or protect border agents." Roumie shot back. He looked around at the senators. "If this room still has a heartbeat, if any of you still believe in your oath, then stop this madness. Cancel the recess." He walked out, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. By 6:30 p.m., social media was flooded with raw, emotional videos. One in particular caught fire, a tearful military veteran in a faded cap. "I served this country, I buried friends, and now I watch our leaders play games. Jonathan Roumie is the only one speaking for us." Another clip showed a mother outside the Capitol holding her baby. "My husband is one of the president's nominees. He was offered a role in the Department of Energy. He's been waiting for months. If Hannity had his way, we'd wait 39 more days while our bills stack and our dreams die." The video ended with her crying. God bless Jonathan Roumie. Inside the White House, Roumie sat quietly, watching it all unfold. Trump entered and put a hand on his shoulder. "You've done more in 6 hours than most do in 6 years, Trump said. "I haven't done enough yet," Roumie replied, because for him, this wasn't about clapping back at Hannity. It was about waking up a nation before it forgot how to care. Back in his private chamber, Jonathan Roumie stood before a mirror. His speech had lit a fire across the country, but inside he was crumbling. His wife had called earlier. "Jonathan, I saw the clip," she whispered. "You look so tired. Please don't carry all this alone." But he had to. He buttoned his jacket, looked himself in the eye, and whispered, "This isn't about me." Moments later, he walked into a room packed with families of the backlog nominees. A mother stepped forward, holding a framed picture of her late son. He'd been nominated to serve in the Department of Veterans Affairs. He believed in America, she said softly, voice cracking. And he believed in you. Roumie's knees nearly gave out. He took the photo gently, holding it like a newborn. I won't let his dream die, he said, not on my watch. That's when a staffer burst in. Sir, Senator Hannity is preparing a press conference. It was clear Hannity wasn't backing down, but neither was Jonathan. By 7:10 p.m., Senate Majority Leader Sean Hannity stood stiffly at a podium on Capitol Hill. The press secretary's remarks today were inappropriate, Hannity began. He knows the rules. The Senate cannot operate on emotion. Reporters whispered. Some frowned. This administration has a responsibility to follow order, not chaos, Hannity continued. I will not be bullied into abandoning tradition because of a camera stunt. Before he could finish, the back doors creaked open. Jonathan Roumie walked in. Let me ask you one question, Sean, Roumie said, stepping beside the podium. What tradition says we recess while America bleeds? Hannity glared. This isn't your time. Oh, it is, Roumie said firmly. It's the time of every family waiting for justice, every mother who lost a son, every judge's seat that sits empty while crime rises. This isn't about tradition. It's about urgency. Gasps filled the room. Then Roumie leaned closer. You want to call me emotional? You're right. I'm emotional because I still care. The press room went silent. Then applause erupted. From staffers, reporters, even two senators standing in the back. Roumie didn't go home that night. Instead, he requested 5 minutes of national airtime, not to speak to senators, but to Americans. At 8 p.m. sharp, he stood before the camera. I wasn't born in power. I was raised in a small town in New Hampshire. I've seen families crumble. I've watched friends struggle. I've seen communities torn apart before they had a chance to thrive. Tonight, we stand at a crossroads. We have 135 patriots waiting to serve and one man standing in the way. This isn't about parties. This is about people. And I'm begging you, don't let this go unnoticed. He held up Eleanor's letter, the widow's plea. This is the cost of delay. This is the price of silence. I won't be silent anymore, will you? Millions watched, from living rooms, hospital beds, police stations. Some cried, some clapped, but no one looked away. Jonathan Roumie had just done what no one expected. He made politics feel human again. Just as his national address ended, a message arrived in the secure inbox. It was from a man named George Renner in Missouri. His son, David Renner, was one of the president's nominees to serve as a federal prosecutor in a crime-ridden district. But the email didn't come with celebration. It came with grief. Mr. Roumie, David died this morning. He was in a car accident while rushing between two jobs. He said he'd finally slow down once he got confirmed. He never got that chance. Jonathan stood frozen. George Renner had attached a photo, David holding a framed letter from the Trump administration offering him the nomination. His eyes were full of hope. That hope was now gone. Roumie printed the photo and pinned it above his desk. Slowly, he wrote on a sticky note beside it, Hannity delayed, David paid. It wasn't just a loss, it was a scar. Inside a marble-walled Senate lounge, Sean Hannity paced, red-faced, clutching a folder of talking points. Sir, one aide whispered. Roumie's speech went viral. Over 20 million views in 2 hours. Supporters are camping outside the Capitol. Hannity slammed the folder down. He ambushed me on my own press floor. But he didn't lie, another aide muttered under his breath. Hannity shot him a glare sharp enough to cut stone. Meanwhile, Jonathan Roumie wasn't hiding. He returned to the Senate floor, not with anger this time, but with grief. He carried a stack of letters, emails, names, and photos from Americans who believed in the promise the president had made. This, Roumie said, holding the stack in the air, is what Sean Hannity is ignoring. Not paperwork, not procedure, people. One by one, he placed photos on every empty senator's seat. It was nearing midnight. Back in his White House office, the lights were dim. Outside, the city buzzed with protest chants and candlelight vigils. Inside were handwritten stories from the families of unconfirmed nominees, with each one more heartbreaking than the last. One read, my daughter was nominated for the DARD. She was ready to tackle child trafficking, but every day the Senate delays, another child disappears. Please don't give up. Roumie set the letter down and quietly began to cry. A knock at the door. It was President Trump. After a long silence, Trump spoke softly. You didn't just give a speech today, Jonathan. You gave this movement soul. Roumie nodded, eyes glassy. I just told the truth. Trump whispered. It's been a quiet time since Washington heard that. Outside, the chant grew louder. No recess. No recess. The next morning, a live broadcast featured retired Marine Sergeant Kyle Benson. He had served 3 tours overseas, lost a leg in Afghanistan, and returned home to a broken system. I was promised help, he said, voice trembling. But the man who could have fixed my claim is on that nominee list, and now he might not get confirmed because of some Senate vacation. He paused, his lip quivering. I'm not supposed to cry on TV, but if Jonathan Roumie hadn't spoken out, I wouldn't have hope right now. Then he broke down. The clip went viral within the hour. Stand with Jonathan trended alongside #confirm the 135. Inside the West Wing, Roumie watched the clip silently. He stood, picked up Eleanor's letter and David Renner's photo, and whispered to his staff, I need to be back on the Hill. As Jonathan Roumie entered the Senate gallery once more, he carried something under his arm, an old wooden chair. At 10:05 a.m. he entered the chamber. Without a word, he walked to the center and placed the chair directly in front of the dais. This, he began quietly, was my grandfather's chair. He sat in it every evening after working a full day at the mill in New Hampshire. He didn't have college degrees. He didn't care about procedure. He cared about putting food on the table and doing the right thing. Roumie rested his hand on the worn wood. If he were here today, he'd ask one question. Why are you going on vacation when people are suffering? No one answered. He looked up. 50 open judge seats, 135 stalled patriots, and a majority leader playing gatekeeper. His voice cracked. If none of you will sit in this chair and stand up for them, then I will. Then he sat down in the middle of the chamber, in silence. By noon, the image of Jonathan Roumie sitting in that old wooden chair on the Senate floor had flooded every screen in America. No speeches, no reporters, just a man, a chair, in a country in crisis. Capitol Police didn't move him. No one dared. President Trump, watching from the White House, said quietly to a staffer, That's my press secretary. Back in the chamber, families of nominees entered the visitor gallery. They said nothing, just sat and watched. A little girl, maybe 9 years old, held a sign, Please don't go on break. My daddy needs his job. Roumie looked up, locking eyes with her, his lips pressed tight. He stayed in that chair for hours. It was nearly 1:00 p.m. Above him in the public gallery sat Martha Green, 84, the mother of a federal judge nominee who had been waiting since January for confirmation. She stood slowly and whispered, May I say a prayer? Security hesitated, but no one stopped her. Father, she began softly, her voice trembling, give strength to this good man. Let those who block justice feel the pain they cause. Let America be led by courage again. Roumie looked up at her, eyes glassy. The live footage captured the moment. That single prayer hit deeper than any speech. A tear rolled down Roumie's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. At 2:15 p.m., the Capitol had become a shrine. Jonathan Roumie remained seated in his grandfather's chair, eyes lowered, silent. Around him lay photos, letters, and the memories of those still waiting. Above him, the gallery was full. Families, veterans, widows, children, and not one person spoke. What Roumie was doing wasn't dramatic, it was real. His stillness was saying what no shout ever could. You failed us. One senator walked in quietly, Josh Hawley. He simply stood beside Roumie. Then another, Marsha Blackburn. Then 2 more. They stood shoulder to shoulder. No chants, no press, just presence. Americans watching online began doing the same in their homes, sitting in chairs in silence, posting photos with the hashtag #WeSitWithRoumie. At 3:05 p.m., a young soldier in uniform entered the public gallery and quietly took a seat. In his lap was a folded American flag. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Roumie noticed him and gently gestured for a staffer to ask who he was. The soldier handed down a note. This flag draped over my brother's coffin last year. He died fighting cartels near the border. My parents were told one of the president's nominees had a plan to stop the drug routes, but it's still on hold. This flag is all I have left. Please don't let it become just cloth. Jonathan stood slowly. Friends, he said aloud, his voice echoing through the chamber. We talk about patriotism, about loyalty, but right now there's a soldier up there holding his brother's flag, wondering why the people in this building are turning their backs on him. He raised the letter in his hand. Sean Hannity, you may not be here, but America is. They're in this room, and they are watching you hide. In the gallery, the soldier saluted. Jonathan saluted back, his hand shaking. By 3:30 p.m., the world had changed. The silence had become a movement. Jonathan Roumie's sit-in on the Senate floor was now being broadcast in real time on every major network. Outside, protests at the Capitol swelled to tens of thousands. Inside, more senators began to arrive, not with press releases, but with shame on their faces. One placed a photo of a nominee on their desk. Another leaned down and whispered to Roumie, "You're right, we should have done more." Still, Hannity said nothing. Back in the chamber, Jonathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the list of all 135 stalled nominees. One by one, he began reading them aloud. Name, position, state, time since nomination. He got through 15 before his voice broke. "This is not just paper," he said. "This is progress. These are patriots. And every hour of delay is a knife in the back of justice." The chamber was dead silent. And then for the first time, a single Republican senator stood up and said, "Press Secretary Roumie is right. This ends today." At 3:48 p.m., the mood in the Senate chamber had completely shifted. After Roumie had read just 15 of the 135 names, Senator Rick Scott stood, then Senator Eric Schmitt, and one by one, senators who had sat in silence rose with heads bowed. Some clutched nominee profiles, some wiped away tears. Jonathan Roumie remained seated, still holding the list, his voice low but steady. In the back of the chamber, Sean Hannity had just entered. He paused in the doorway, looking pale. For the first time, no one rushed to greet him. Jonathan saw him, but he didn't stop. He simply said, "Senator Hannity, I have 120 names left to read. You're welcome to stay and listen. It's the least you can do." And then he began again, name by name, date by state. By 4:30 p.m., Jonathan Roumie had finished reading the final name. The last nominee on the list was a school safety expert nominated to the Department of Education whose own child had been a victim of school violence. Roumie closed the folder. His voice broke on the final word. He paused. Complete silence for 10 full seconds. Then, from the back corner of the Senate chamber, a single clap echoed. It was Senator Tim Scott, standing, clapping slowly, tears in his eyes. Then another clap. Senator Mike Lee. Then another. Soon the entire chamber was standing, applauding, not for theatrics, but for truth, for courage, for America. Roumie remained seated, humble, exhausted. Sean Hannity stood too, but his eyes were downcast, and the camera zoomed in on his reckoning. This was no longer a protest. It was a moral correction. The image would be shared worldwide. Jonathan Roumie seated in that old wooden chair, face wet with tears, surrounded by a Congress that had finally found its conscience. And the entire nation knew Jonathan Roumie had won. But it wasn't for himself, it was for them. If this story moved your heart, if Jonathan Roumie earned your respect today, then hit that like button, subscribe for more true and emotional political stories, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Tell us which moment hit you the hardest, and don't forget to join our channel membership for behind-the-scenes content. Thank you for standing with the truth, and as always, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.